Jake, do we have PragerU on why on
Ooh, I
how
love PragerU.
on how you should judge America?
One of the
Yes.
most important differences between the left and the right is how each regards the role and the size of the government. The left believes that the state should be the most powerful force in society. Among many other things, the government should be in control of educating every child, should provide all health care, and should regulate often to the minutest detail how businesses conduct their business. In Germany, for instance, the government legislates the time of day stores have to close. In short, there should
Okay, let's pause. Let's pause on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of local governments that, you know, I mean, liquor stores are heavily legislated in the US, right? You can't like get beer after 10 p.m. in some towns. I don't know.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is a place where the US like definitely does that. And like in that case, it always feels a little obnoxious to me because it's like sort of it's like, oh, we don't think that you should be drinking right now. So, nobody's allowed to sell you alcohol. But also like, I don't know if the government mandates what time of day things have to be closed. I mean, I worked at a couple of grocery stores in the past. That sounds kind of nice to me. Like, yeah. I don't hate that idea.
I don't see how this is a net bad. I guess if you're a business that you want to be an all-night supermarket and it's tough in Germany, I don't know where he's going with it. It's not a strong point for me. If I'm trying to imagine myself like my politics are flexible and I'm watching this, I'm like, all right, stores closed.
Yeah. That's like, and again, if you're a worker, then it's like, oh, so there's like, like especially, if I'm not going to have to like be pressured into doing overtime past a certain time, like again, that doesn't. I mean, sure, I like the convenience of all night stores, but like this doesn't sound too tyrannical to me yet. And says his other examples are the left wants free healthcare, which is horrible, as we all know, but also that leftists believe that the government should be responsible for educating every child, which is I mean, the government, like public schools in the United States, do have a legal obligation to educate every child. I mean, unless their parents would educate them somewhere else, like they have to do that. And I mean, that seems like a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're just trying to sound spooky, like it's a horror movie, like the left believes that there is a government and you're supposed to think like, oh no, we should get rid of it. What?
Yes, exactly. Okay, let's keep going.
Government, not parents, not businesses, not private schools, not religious institutions, not even the individual human conscience. Conservatives, on the other hand, believe the government's role in society should be limited to absolute necessities, such as national defense, and to being the resource of last resort to help citizens who cannot be helped by family, by community, or by religious and secular charities.
Okay,
conservatives understand.
Let's just pause. Okay, so in his vision of like what would be an acceptable welfare state, according to Dennis Prager, in order to qualify for government assistance, I mean, I don't want to be uncharitable here, but I think this is what I just heard. You have to, I assume, prove to someone that you have no family who could help you, that there's no church that would do anything to help you. Like, that sounds like, wow. I mean, I like how many how many steps do we have to go through before you actually get help in this scenario?
Yeah, exactly. And what was that thing about the conscience? He believes that the left doesn't
Yeah. Yeah, right. No, fair enough.
This is the guy who's in charge of this too. Like,
yeah, no,
this is the best we're getting.
Yeah, this is Dennis Prager, right? It's Prager University. This is like I mean, if you have a whole university named after you, it seems like you should be able to do better than this. But it seems like he wants to make like really, really sure that absolutely nobody is getting any kind of government aid if they possibly have any sort of other option at all, right? That like that's like what we should really like if we're thinking about how government social services should work. Like the main, and this is, whatever. It's not like unique to Dennis Prager. This is like what conservatives in general kind of think. This is like what neoliberal Democrats kind of think. I remember in 2016, Hillary Clinton doing this like an applause line in a debate that she doesn't want to pay for Donald Trump's kids' college. That like, so nobody's, which I'm sure they would go to public college, whatever. But like nobody should get it. Like the thing that we should be worried about is that somebody who doesn't really deserve it might be getting government aid.
Yeah, exactly. I did a story recently on Redacted about how there's a lot of states that are taking federal aid and just storing it away. Like they would rather hold on to it. It's aid that's meant like to aid for welfare, basically. And all of this money, there's like billions of dollars sitting in state coffers that they would just rather have sit there than actually help people. And so it is a really poisonous way of looking at things. And there are some states who actually redirect that money to, like child protective services. So if maybe the mom can't get financial help from the government, but if she's in a bad place, they can take her kid away and so they solve your problem somehow,
Yeah.
And so it's scarier than like the actual what happens in practice is like scarier than making fun of this this Dennis Prager guy right now, even though like I would want stronger arguments if I were working for PragerU.
Yes. Come on, this is,
but yeah, the result is really ridiculous, and they work against themselves.
Yeah. YouTube isn't. I expect better from a YouTube university, but
yes.
Yeah, I guess like the one serious point I make about this is it's just like this obsession with making sure that like we're really, really sure that everybody has absolutely no other options. Like one, I think from a personal freedom perspective is terrible because like if you have family members who could help you if they chose to, or if you have a church that could help you if they chose to, and that you could only get some sort of help from society as a whole if you've shown that you don't have these options, then any strings they want to attach to that help they can attach, right? They really have you under their power, right?
Yeah. Actually, in Utah, the Mormon Church does they do actually deal with a lot of keeping out welfare, and they do tie a lot of strings to it. You gotta, I guess, pretend you're Mormon for a little bit in order to get welfare in Utah.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure, like, it doesn't exactly stretch imagination to see a religious organization saying, like, okay, well, you're about to be evicted or pay your rent, but like no living with somebody out of wedlock or, like whatever, right? Like that.
Yeah.
So like, that's one thing, that like you have, like, just in terms of like, if you care not about like people's freedom to keep every cent in their bank account, but like about their freedom to like actually decide how they would live their lives, then that's like awful if everything's like means tested at all, never mind to the degree that he wants it to be. But then also, like, I don't know. I mean, aren't conservatives supposed to be super concerned about bureaucracy? Like, if you have all of these layers of, okay, nobody can get help, if there's any possibility that they could like find a church that's willing to help them, if they have family who are willing to help them, this has to be the last resort. Like, you know, you have to have a bunch of bureaucrats.
Yeah. Is there a fountain with pennies in it in your local town? You know, have you tried OnlyFans? You know, like,
yeah, no, exactly.
Prove it.
And this sounds like we're giving a lot of power to government bureaucrats here. If they're like, you know, if they're like scrutinizing your case to see if you know, tried the pennies in the fountain first, you know, to decide whether or not you merit help. I mean, that sounds like a much more powerful government bureaucracy than if you just like have a legal right to, you know, healthcare, education, whatever, just, you know, just for being a person. You know, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to prove anything.
Yeah, I don't think they thought through the bureaucracy thing, you know, honestly.
All right, let's keep watching.
That as governments grow in size and power, the following will inevitably happen. 1, there will be ever increasing amounts of corruption. Power and money breed corruption. People in government will sell government influence for personal and political gain, and people outside government will seek to buy influence and favors. In Africa and Latin America, government corruption has been the single biggest factor holding nations back from progressing. 2, individual liberty will decline. With a few exceptions, such as an unrestricted right to abortion, individual liberty is less important to the left than to the right. This is neither an opinion nor a criticism. It is simple logic. The more control the government has over people's lives, the less liberty people have. 3, countries with ever-expanding governments will either reduce the size of their government or eventually collapse economically. Every welfare state ultimately becomes a Ponzi scheme, relying on new payers to pay previous payers. And when it runs out of the new payers, the scheme collapses. All the welfare states of the world, including wealthy European countries, are already experiencing this problem to varying degrees. 4,
to varying degrees.
In order to pay for an ever-expanding government, taxes are constantly increased. But at a given level of taxation, the society's wealth producers will either stop working, work less, hire fewer people, or move their business out of the state or out of the country. 5, big government produces big deficits and ever-increasing and ultimately unsustainable debt. This, too, is only logical. The more money the state hands out, the more money people will demand from the state. No recipient of free money has ever said, "Thank you, I have enough." Unless big governments get smaller, they will all eventually collapse under their own weight, with terrible consequences socially as well as economically. 6, the bigger the government, the greater the opportunities for doing great evil. The 20th century was the most murderous century in recorded history. And who did all this killing? Big governments. Evil individuals without power can do only so much harm. But when evil individuals take control of a big government, the amount of harm they can do is essentially unlimited. The right fears big government. The left fears big business. But Coca-Cola can't break into your house or confiscate your wealth. Only big government can do that. As irresponsible as any big business has ever been, it is only big government that can build concentration camps and commit genocide. 7, big government eats away at the moral character of a nation. People no longer take care of other people. After all, they know the government will do that. That's why Americans give far more of their money and volunteer far more of their time to charity than do Europeans at the same economic level. Without the belief in an ever-expanding government, there is no left. Without a belief in limited government, there is no right. I'm Dennis Prager.
Yeah, I can't believe he's president. I don't know. They didn't have a better guy. I mean, it's interesting that we brought up early, or I brought up earlier in the talk when we were talking about Whoopi, we were talking about the Holocaust and how there's an argument that racism doesn't change outcomes for Jews during the Holocaust, but that actually institutions, if there are a lack of institutions, you're more likely to die in the Holocaust. So we've already like disproved his argument in so many ways.
Well, I will say that the Coca-Cola can breaking into your house was a nice like visual touch. You know, that was fun.
Yeah.
Or I guess the Coca-Cola can knock on the door and didn't actually get into the house.
Yeah, but if you also think of like there are plenty of private companies who seize their resources, and you have a lot of gunboat diplomacy that it's just he's overlooking history. It's just I can pick of all these things that you have gunboat diplomacy that would on behalf of American banks like try to shoot their way to get their money in the Caribbean and South America. You have the banana plantations that are guarded by the military. Like it's obviously wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like, also I point out that Coca-Cola is a fun example because in the 90s and early 2000s, they were repeatedly accused of hiring death squads to kill union organizers in Colombia. So that like we could have done like an image where the Coca-Cola can had like a gun
is armed. No,
yeah.
It's got a can opener and
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, and it just seems like, I mean, I think like all of the examples you're giving, right? But that's government. It's like, okay, sure. But like, I mean, I don't think Dennis Prager is endorsing anarchism, right? Like we agree that there's going to be a government of some sort or another, right? So like, given that, right, is the thing that you should worry about that like it's going to, that, you're going to get like, the taxes are going to be too high because you're going to be paid for, for social services, or, God forbid, like a big business gets nationalized or something, or is the thing that you should be worried about that governments are going to act on behalf of big business and do all of these things that you're talking about? Yeah,
I mean the Coke can knocking on your door is definitely an image that will stay with me and haunt me. Going back to Hal PragerU, Will. But we talked about, I mean, the fact that he was like Ponzi, the government is just a giant Ponzi scheme. It's like, what is the stock market then? And how are you explaining that there are all these fake businesses making billions of dollars right now? So
yeah, I mean, it's a funny claim, right? The Ponzi scheme thing, because it's like, well, okay, but wait a second. So, an actual Ponzi scheme, like you have to, sell something to people who sell things, things to people who sell things, like crypto. But like but if you just have a welfare state, then ideally universal social programs, right? Everybody pays into it and everybody also benefits from it. That seems like, that I'm not really getting where the Ponzi scheme thing comes in, except of course that Dennis Prager's imagination, the way that this would play out is that, everybody just like decides to stop working, because you can
it's just not true. There's been studies where people have a universal basic income and it's like, oh no, kids actually stop working and go to school. That's what they do. People have time to make their lives better. It's like,
yeah, but you don't get this like huge uptick and like people just like it just people being, you know, what's the phrase, you know, neat, right? Not in employment, education, or training. Like I don't think any of these experiments in UBI, you get that. And certainly just in like regular social democratic welfare states, like, you know, Swedes and Norwegians, as far as I've ever heard, like still have jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but think about how well their prisoners are living and the IKEA furniture that they have. They're so comfortable. And
well, that definitely
that mass shooter is like playing Nintendo all day.
Yeah, that definitely does piss me off when I think about that, because it's like, my God, right? Like Anders Breivik gets a Nintendo and he'll get out of prison someday. And that should make all of us angry, because like, obviously Norway would be better off if they had what we had here, which is like tons of poverty.
You lock up Anders Breivik and his mother and his cousins. Anybody he's ever talked to, his Facebook friends.
Yeah, and that's why there's so much less violent crime in the United States than there is in Norway. I mean, like, I don't think you can like step outside at night in Oslo without like drive-by shootings happening. You know, I'm sure because their like criminal justice system is so lenient. Or maybe it's
that hardcore Norwegian rap that comes out.
See, I've heard of hardcore Norwegian, like death metal. It was a black metal, right? That I've heard of. I'm not familiar with Norwegian rap. Maybe somebody could send me some of that.
It exists, but it's probably like more upbeat.
I'm sure that's true. Yeah, but I don't know. It seems like maybe if you have like strong unions in a big welfare state, then like you could actually have like a really lenient criminal justice system by American standards, but also not very much violent crime, which, like, again, I know we're supposed to think that America is the greatest country in the history of countries and anything ever that's ever existed in any species, any galaxy, that, nothing will ever be better than America. But like, on the face of it, that does sound better than this to me.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, he's really making an argument for the left, I think.
Yeah. I think so. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the Patreon-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the Patreon-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.